Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with this week's episode of the Market Monday. So this is going to be more of a rant video than a market video, but I'm going to try to put the market aspect into it and kind of talk about Wizards of the Coast policy when it comes to reprints, especially the Commander products. Last year was a very dismal as far as the reprint equity was concerned for the Commander product, and that was one of the reasons why it did not sell. Wizards was banking on the new cards to really be the spotlight of those Commander decks and sell, and then people asked specifically this year if they'd put reprints in that people actually wanted or would keep the value up, that you could actually feel good at buying a Commander deck and it would hold its price. However, this year that does not seem the case. It looks like that we are back in the mix of disappointing reprints, especially when it comes to the land base and some of the ones they've spoiled right out the gates here for the Morph deck. So as you can see in front of you, these are the lands that are going to be coming out in Commander 2019, and this just confirms my suspicions that there must be some sort of, I guess you'd call it suit, or Rudu call them suits, that have come in and say, okay, there can only be this amount of money equity that is put in a deck, and when the architects of these decks start building the decks, then they have to start looking for cheap lands that, and especially lands. It seems to be the lands, and it's a lot of times even creatures that they can just throw in and make it work. And what this ends up doing is it ends up getting a lot of reprints from recent sets, and I would say the Battle for Zendikar is actually pretty recent in the scope of things. It is also one of the sets that was printed into Oblivion, and these particular cards have very little value. Cinderglade is the one that has the most value because it does see play in Modern Scapeshift, but even in that deck, with all the Modern Scapeshift decks stretching the supply of Cinderglades, Cinderglade was only worth about $4 at its peak, so it just peaked right here at $4. I'm kind of salty for this particular spec because I didn't think in a million years that they'd reprint Cinderglade, especially in a Commander product. I thought this one was pretty safe for quite some time, and it just goes to the bemoaning of a lot of the players saying, why isn't this reprinted? Why isn't this card reprinted? And they go to sets like as soon as little back as Battle for Zendikar to choose their reprints. So it just makes you scratch your head about who's in charge of these deck archetypes. They could have used basically any other land other than the Cinderglade run for these particular decks. They could have even gone for the Battle Bond decks. Those would have been very good additions to the Commander set, or the Battle Bond lands, even the ally colored ones, and thrown them in here, and people would have been very happy about those lands. So again, there is a lot of people moaning about these. I'm actually one of them. It just doesn't make any sense that these continue to get reprinted, and then what that ends up doing is it makes it so sets like Battle for Zendikar, or even one worse, Dragon's Maze, never has the opportunity to accrue value, and never has the value to even look like it was a good set as far as, you know, equity or monetarily, because they continue to reprint these cards too soon. So I think investment strategies need to change. There used to be like a window you'd be like, okay, they're not going to touch anything from Shadows of Innistrad, Battle for Zendikar. It's just too soon. There's no equity in it. There's no point for a reprint, and so you can invest this card. Well, all bets are off now with Wizards of the Coast. In fact, the opposite seems to hold true. If it is a new set, they seem to reprint it very quickly in these Commander sets. And yes, even in Master sets or Horizon sets, or like Battle Bonds, Conspiracies, it seems to have a lot of newer cards that get put in the mix rather than the older counterparts that are worth a little bit more. So again, this isn't going to add a lot of equity. Expect these particular cards to get absolutely crushed. It took forever for Cinderglade to even go to get a double up. So it went all the way from its bottom when it rotated to finally is getting around $4. And now the price of Cinderglade is going to crash. Now, I did like these lands because they did see a lot of play in Commander, and then potentially some of them did see play like the Cinderglade in Modern, and therefore long term, eventually even Battle for Zendikar, eventually even Khans of Tarkir, Oath of Gatewatch, or some of these other sets, Kaladesh, Aether Revolt, that were open like crazy during the height of Magic the Gathering, will someday be able to accrue some value. But we're thinking like 5 years is what those investments were for. But if Wizards of the Coast continues to see a cheap target to say, okay, we can throw this in without going over the, you know, $80 budget we have for the Commander deck, then it's going to just kind of keep doing this cycle, this self-defeating cycle of these cards never being able to actually be worth anything, and then get people moaning about these being printed in the subsequent set. So again, Wizz the Coast, just lay off. If they would print this in 3-4 years, Cinderglade would be a chase card that people actually would want. But this is just too soon for a card like Cinderglade. If we come back down to the Throne of Eldraine, or excuse me, the Commander 2019, haven't seen Throne of Eldraine spoilers yet. I'm getting ahead of myself here. There are some decent little new cards here, but those ones are really, really up in the air of how much they are going to be worth. There are years where like Teferi's Protection just gets played a ton and then goes for a, pays for the deck itself, and then those commander sets are looked back with people thinking they were great decks because of those included cards. But the majority of the time, you want the known information, you want the reprints to hold the equity to justify buying this particular deck. And there are some baddies in this deck. So let's go back over to the Sungrass Prairie, which just had a reprint in 2016 for Commander, only $1.49. Not getting much equity from the Sungrass Prairie. That's another card it's basically a dud for the inclusion in the Commander set. Again, if they would have waited for this particular card, possibly this one could be a chase card later on to have some sort of drive for people buying the product. If we go over to these cards like the Stratus Dancer, which is bulk, the Karu Spell Snatcher, which is also bulk, we go over to Trail of Mysteries, which has no value. These are awful reprints as far as rares to put them in the deck. I mean, at this point, you might as well. I don't know if they have like a certain amount of rares or uncommons or commons that they actually have to put at that rarity. If so, this is just kind of a waste of a slot that they could have easily dumbed down to uncommons, and I don't think people would be moaning about these inclusions. So we have some of these other ones like the Apec Altasar, which is interesting, but we'll have to wait and see if people want to pick up cards like this, which when it enters the battlefield, it fights a creature and then fights another creature because it will be enraged. So you probably could kill 2 commanders for the whopping cost of 9 mana. But again, this is one of those cards that is going to have a hard time finding a place outside of just very specific creature-based ramp decks. I mean, at this point, you can be ramping until Eldrazi. This can do a lot more than the Altasar is going to do, or just the plethora of dinosaur decks that do exist out there. But again, I'm not sure that either the Thought Sponge or the Apex Altasar is the type of cards that are going to be headlining these particular decks. Now, there's a lot of time for me to be disproven about Commander 2019. From the horse's mouth from Gavin, this is supposed to be a lot better of a set when it comes to reprints, but what we have so far is really lacking in the reprint department. Going back to another spoiler with Vraska the Unseen, this was a card that never really held any value. It's been stuck at this $3 mark. It's because this was a dual deck. So they decided to put a Mythic with the stretch of Planeswalkers that you could put in decks that hold some sort of value. We're even thinking about the $10 to $15 to $20 mark of Planeswalkers that could go in a deck. This is the choice. At this point, sort of like a bulkish card. It's sort of a favorite, but I wouldn't put it maybe right in the 50 percentile of Planeswalkers that see play in Commander. It does destroy an online permanent, and if you plus it up a couple times, you can destroy another non-land permanent, but overall Vraska the Unseen is pretty lackluster, especially since it wasn't a dual deck. It wasn't a dual deck that was printed into Oblivion, and you can see the pricing has not gone up on this card for years. It's stayed at that stagnant price. So this is another card that's going to be crushed. It's going to be worth less than $1 out when the dust settles, and it's going to be something that isn't going to drive any sort of excitement toward these decks. And it's kind of a philosophy. I know that other YouTubers out there or other people will say, well, these sort of products aren't supposed to have a lot of monetary value in them because then all the investors will just pick it up. Well, Magic doesn't work that way, especially in paper. Even the regular players are unhappy buying a product that is no longer worth the money that they paid for it. So unless they're getting their $40 for $40, you will hear them moan, even as casual as they get. And eventually these products do not sell and they get stuck on the shelf, and it just leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth. So we have Den Protector, another card that was recently reprinted, I believe, in another Commander deck. So Den Protector has already been reprinted in Commander 2016. Again, this card is a card that has a hard time getting any sort of value. In fact, it started to seem like it might go up And unfortunately, though, now this reprint is just going to kick it in the teeth, and this card's probably going to go down to the 50 cent, 25 cent mark. Now, again, there might be a time period that you could, if you feel lucky, if you feel like this card is not going to be reprinted in 5 years, get in these at a quarter, and it might actually pan out for you in 5 years. However, it's this whole philosophy of reprinting newer cards. Look at all the Morph cards they chose. Morph was back during Onslaught, right? So there are a lot of cards I've never seen a reprint that have higher prices, I would expect, and they choose a lot of them from Dragons of Tarkir. Yeah. I don't know, Wizards. Doesn't seem very smart. Some of these other cards, too, are interesting, but they're very, very expensive. Some of the frontlining legendary creatures definitely will have a good price point, but we have another one here in Bane of the Living that doesn't really hold any sort of price, and another mythic in the form of Deathmist Raptor, which I believe also, didn't Deathmist Raptor have a reprint, or am I thinking of something else? No, okay, so it is Deathmist Raptor's first reprint. However, it's funny that this did spike up in value when Morph was spoiled, but yet, I mean, this is where you have to beware of when mechanics are spoiled, that there's probably a higher chance, like at least more than a third of a chance, or 33% chance, that a card that you're thinking of speccing into, unless it's on the reserve list, will be printed in whatever the mechanic that is being printed in. So I think this is going to be a very failed spec for many people when they bought in here at the $1.50 mark, and then it went up to $1.75 because of all the people who bought it. However, it is being reprinted, and this is also one that's just kind of lackluster in general in Commander. It's just a creature that doesn't really do anything, just Death Touch. At best, it's a blocker that can come back with the be able to return it every time you morph something over. But very, very lackluster in Commander. I bet it doesn't see a lot of play on EDH Rec for even morph-based decks like Animorph or other decks that traditionally do morph. Alrighty, so back to the spoilers. Stronic Resonator is a good one with the copying a triggered ability. The Vesuvian Shapeshifter, I believe that is a reprint with a Vesuvian Shapeshifter. We'll look this one up real quick. Vesuvian Shapeshifter. Vesuvin Shapeshifter. Yeah. Okay, so here's another one that was in Masters 25, and it does not have any sort of price to really add to the value of the Commander set. These Gift of Doom is a new reprint that looks interesting. Isn't Ixodron also a reprint, if I remember correctly? Yes, it is. It's from Time Spiral and also had a Commander reprint. So this is another one that's had another one. A $2.50 card is another card that is not going to get anyone excited about this being included into the mix. It's a good functional reprint, but I'm really, really hoping in the next couple of weeks or within a week when we get the full spoiler that they're going to showcase some sort of cards that can hold some sort of equity or give some sort of reason to be buying, especially this Morph deck, because that's a lot of rares that have already, has the full deck been spoiled? Some in the comment section let me know if it's spoiled. So that's kind of what I want to talk about with the Commander set. Same thing we have Brawl decks coming out. We have a lot of products that are going to compete with Commander 2019, and so far it just feels like this is going to be another repeat of Commander 2018, unless they're saving the best for last. Wizards is kind of weird. Sometimes they really come out with all the punches and showcase some cards that everybody wants. There are a few of them here and there that people have been excited about, some of the new Commanders, but all in all, with the reprint wise, it has been very, very, very disappointing of the cards that have been included. Even cards like Seedborn Muse, which is the card that Gavin showcased to try to prove that they were serious about reprints, had been recently reprinted in Battle Bond. I mean, Battle Bond isn't even a year old yet. It was the summer set, but it didn't really go out of stock until November? You could still get boxes even at the first of the year for extremely cheap for Battle Bond. So the dust hasn't even settled with that particular set, and they're already reprinting one of the cards out of that set. So anyway, just be very, very careful with the Commander set so far. It seems like this will have a lot of supply. As far as my numbers are concerned, Wizards of the Coast is playing their typical create demand by lack of supply. They are allotting this for the first wave to game stores, and it's pretty small, but I'm pretty sure there also will be like a week one. So how it's working right now in the new age of how Wizards of the Coast does their distribution is every product, you name it, is limited when they release it, all from War of the Spark to Core 2020 to the Core 2020 bundles, and then it seems to be about a week or 2 weeks, and then they flood the market. So bundles, for example, were something that were very, very hard for me to come by for Core 2020. They were pretty much allotted. The allotment was extremely small, and now I have every distributor is just trying to throw them at me because now they need to sell them because other sets are coming out. Throne of Eldraine, they're taking pre-orders for it. And then you have same thing with like Modern Horizons. It was limited, and then all of a sudden now everyone has a bazillion of them. Core 2020 is a box I can already get at a discount because again, distributors are trying to free up both capital and free up space, distribution space for the new sets that are coming out. So they're fire selling Core 2020, which is barely a few weeks old or a month old for the set. So I'm expecting the same with it. I think they're going to try to pull a fast one. It seems to be working too, because I have a lot of people that want to order products and I can't fulfill it. And then they probably have to shop elsewhere, and it probably does create a buying spree because of the illusion of lack of supply, and then Wizard of the Coast dumps everything on us. So it's weird how their distribution works too, because even products that I thought was out of stock, a lot of distributors are starting to pick up more of the product, and we're getting this new influx of these products. So just be careful out there with Core 2020. I would like to see a lot more reprint equity. Let's just go over and see if we can find Cinderglade. Let's see if one of these is in the Commander 2019, if we can get some prices, see if there's some prices for Commander 2019. So it doesn't look like that has any of them up here. I think I just have to post all the ones in for, let's go ahead and see if we can search it another way. No, it doesn't look like it's quite up on Goldfish. So anyway, I'll get a whole EV for the Commander 2019 to see if it is worth it, but yeah, I have a hard time seeing the non-reprints carry the equity for this particular set. Alrighty, so last but not least, I want to kind of give another update to last week's video about just the wallet fatigue. I really do think we're starting to see it with the War of the Spark, doing more research on War of the Spark and the Modern Horizons. So both these are very interesting to me. Let's come over here and we're going to continue to look at Core 2020. So Core 2020 still has a pretty decent box EV for its contents. This is very good for a core set that is now about a month old. So it's still hitting above the 350s, which I think puts it around $80 to $90 box EV. You still have $20 mythics that do see play, but not like an extreme amount. We have Sorin Imperious Bloodlord that is in a tier 1 deck, and Omnath that are in tier 1 decks that are holding it at a pretty decent mark, but neither one of those, I mean, the Magic is on standard is pretty spread. The number 1 deck, I believe, is Scape Shift. And the card that was even for that is not holding that well. What is the land that goes into Scape Shift? Field of the Dead is about $4, which is surprising with this one, is a lot less than the rest of the rares that aren't seeing as much play. The last big major tournament shifting Ceratops was the most used sideboard card. It's kind of holding it around the $5 mark. But there's a lot of cards that are definitely holding more than I think they should be at a set that's now a month old, especially these mythics. And that's kind of a bad sign for people actually opening the booster boxes. Modern Horizons is the big surprise that this set continues to have a positive box EV if you're to get this at distribution price. Currently, I can get it for $163. I think is the price that I currently can get it at. Been selling a lot of boxes because this is still a very, very good box EV with a Renin 6 at $90 and an Urza Lord High Artificer at the $40 mark, and even Force of Negation at the rare for the $39. And Seasoned Pyromancer, another mythic at $26. Yes, it does have kind of the luxury tax that increases the price of these cards because the pack price is more. But for how much you'd think that would be on the market right now, it just feels to me there's not as much Modern Horizons if this would have been released like in the first of the year when people actually weren't experiencing the wallet fatigue. So anyway, that's coming an update with those. A lot of products come out. We'll keep our eye out on Brawl. We'll keep our eye out on the the Throne of Eldraine. Let me know in the comment section how you feel so far about the Commander 2019. Are you going to be buying into them, or you think it's going to be another repeat of 2018? Is it a bad sign that Gavin chooses Seedborn Muse and then showcases the lands that hold no value as or are they just going to pull a fast one and throw a bunch of expensive cards like Mana Crypts in the decks and see, it is a worthwhile set. We'll have to wait and see for that, but this can be kind of a short and sweet Market Monday. I'm going to be looking over more in depth of the value of cards out of the Commander 2019 for the Rogue Market channel to see if there's any sleepers once we start getting kind of a baseline price of what people are paying for the pre-orders. It does typically seem to be that every Commander set has had those cards that have bottomed out. Card Kingdom is usually a very great place to get cards from the Commander sets about a month out. It seems like their site bottoms out where you can find rares for 25 cents. I know that's something that I've made quite a bit of money, or at least juggling it, selling their cards back to them like a year later on Commander sets when they dumb down the price of some sort of new rare down to like 25 cents. You buy them all out because they do see play. And we'll talk about that probably in a subsequent Market Monday about just really being focused on the EDH Rec stats. If you start to see a new card see a lot of play outside of the decks, because what happens on EDH Rec is people just build the new commanders and they include a lot of the cards in the pre-boxed commander because they're upgrading it. They're not building a brand new deck. But if you start to see another card see a lot of play outside those decks, that's a good time to really take a second look at that. And if it's something that is under 50 cents, then it's definitely a good time to be buying in on those and finding those sites that do bottom out the prices when the supply is very high. So speaking of which, Modern Horizons I think is starting to get lucrative in those particular sites. Ultimate Masters is another set that it looks like a lot of those cards are starting to move. A lot of the cards that were bulk rare prices have moved up from Ultimate Masters, and I'll have to take a look at that and do an update video on the Rogue Market for that particular topic. But all in all, prices should be on most of these sets both on the up and down. On the sets that are a little bit older like Ultimate Masters and the sets that are newer or should be going up, and the sets like Modern Horizons that are still should be cracked are not going down as fast as I think they would. And so it just shows to me that this is a really slow time for the Magic the Gathering paper market. I don't know if Arena really is cannibalizing the community as much as they as the pros are saying or other people are saying. We'll have to keep a number on the GP, how many people participate in. I'd also like to see numbers on side events and things like that. Hopefully we can get some transparency and people can actually do the legwork before we can figure out the exact kind of theme or mood of the MTG market. And we hope you enjoyed this video. This has been Kevin with the Rogue Deck Builder. If you're looking for those Rogue Market videos, we will have a Rogue Roundup video, as well as we'll have plenty of brews coming out this week. I do have a person that's going to help me edit the gameplay footage. I have a Soul Sisters deck coming up. We'll probably revisit Skred with a Chandra flair to it, and I have a few standard decks that I definitely want to showcase. Anyway, this has been Kevin with Rogue Deck Builder. Thanks for watching.